Hello and welcome. Today we are going to talk about FAQ on professional practice, supervision. All FAQ information shared in this talk is directly sourced from the official Board of Engineers Malaysia, BEM, website. Disclaimer: this talk merely reads out the FAQ content. No responsibility is assumed by the producer for its accuracy, interpretation, or application. Should the consultant engineer who carry out the design supervise the works? For example, the client appoints a consultant engineer just for design but not for supervision, as supervision is by the client's team. Under UBBL Bylaw 5, supervision shall be undertaken by the submitting person. In a project comprising many components, the PEPC who endorses the design shall be deemed to have supervised that work. Even though the supervision is carried out by the client's team, the SP and the PEPC shall remain responsible and liable. Therefore, he must have full control over the supervision team. What do you mean by supervision? Supervision is to ensure that construction is in accordance with the approved plans and in compliance with the UBBL or Sarawak Building Ordinance or Sabah Building Bylaws, and other relevant laws. Can I certify completion of construction if I do not supervise the construction works of the project despite it being designed by me? No. As the submitting person, you are required to provide supervision of the construction. Therefore, you should ensure that you provide the supervision before you certify completion of the construction. I was appointed in 1997. Subsequently, the project was abandoned. Recently it was revived without my knowledge. The job is now completed and the architect asked me to resubmit and I refused. Am I acting correctly? You are right not to sign anything you did not supervise. You may lodge a complaint with BEM if another engineer takes over to sign the submission without your letter of release. Is subsurface investigation or site investigation, SI, required for each project to be developed? Yes. You should specify appropriate SI to obtain the relevant subsurface information, e.g. soil and rock characteristics and parameters, groundwater information, etc., so that the geotechnical design, e.g. foundation, slope stabilization, etc., can be properly carried out to ensure public safety. Do I need to supervise the subsurface investigation, SI? Yes. All SI should be supervised by the professional who is responsible for the design or by qualified and experienced staff under his control. BEM Circular Number 006 Engineer's Responsibility for Subsurface Investigation. Can I just leave the scope of works of the subsurface investigation, SI, e.g. locations, numbers, types of field and laboratory tests, etc., to be specified to the SI contractor? No. You should properly specify and determine the numbers and suitable types of field and laboratory tests required for the site for your design later. BEM Circular Number 006 Engineer's Responsibility for Subsurface Investigation. Where do engineers stand when the supervision part of a project is taken off from the scope of work by the JKR? In contracts with JKR, it is stated clearly that the services of the engineer are required only up to the design stage. The question is, will the engineer still be legally responsible for the work? The BEM circular is very clear on the matter. If supervision is not included in the scope of works, do not sign the certificate of completion and compliance or equivalent, especially for projects in the private sectors. However, for public sector projects, the issue of the Interpretation Act, which stipulates that any law of Parliament is not binding on the government unless specifically stated otherwise, will need to be addressed. Meanwhile, the Board of Engineers Malaysia, BEM, has advised the Director General of the JKR to include supervision by the consulting engineer when engaged to carry out design works. I am a submitting person, PEPC, for civil, structural, and geotechnical works. Can the site supervisor at site, who represents me, be employed by the client/developer? PEPC shall be responsible for the supervision. The supervision can be carried out by the site personnel who have the necessary experience, qualification, and is registered with the BEM either as professional engineer, graduate engineer, engineering technologist or inspector of works, IOW. The submitting person, PEPC, shall be satisfied that the site personnel representing him to carry out supervision comply with the following criteria. Take instruction and direction from the PEPC, and report back to the PEPC on the supervision works. Act on behalf of the PEPC on the supervision works. As long as all the criteria above are fulfilled, employment by either by the PEPC or by the client/developer and then seconded to PEPC is acceptable. Some local authority requires soil investigation, SI, report to be endorsed by a professional engineer. Can I endorse the SI report if the SI works were not supervised by me? No, SI work shall be supervised by the professional engineer who is responsible for the design or by qualified and experienced staff under his control as per BEM Circular No. 006 Engineer's responsibility for subsurface investigation. Is the second engineer liable for the design and work supervised by the first engineer? The last man standing rule applies. Whoever is the submitting person signing off the completion of works will assume full liability even if some of the works had been carried out earlier before his involvement. When a project is partially completed and the owner terminates the first engineer's services and appoints a second engineer to take over, will the second engineer be liable for the portion of works already partially completed under the first engineer? The last man standing rule applies. Whoever is the submitting person signing off the completion works will assume full liability even if some of the works had been carried out earlier before his involvement.
If you like our content, kindly like, share and subscribe.